people will go and join in.
I might do.
Well, it's up to you, my dear. If you want 9 million to watch you.
So, what was you going to say, Steve? It was quite interesting.
80s and 90s for me were wild in the subject because back then, people didn't have the internet, so they didn't have any battleground, should we say, because people, back then it was literally, I would go to events and I would see researchers literally come to blows, basically, with, honestly, yeah, I've been to places where researchers, Busty Taylor, and a few different people, which would come to basically physical blows, over the subject matter. And I used to think, why, and of course, there was a lot of that back then. Of course, the internet's changed things now, but it was interesting times and it was funny times, and you get to hear about, all the things that go on in the background of this subject. I've always said sometimes, the people in the subject sometimes are more fascinating than the actual phenomena. When you get to
I go along with you there, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. The things you get to find out and stuff. But the 90s was good. I mean, I was part of the Manchester, the X-Files. X-Files was big back then, of course, and they got in touch and asked me to be involved in the X-Files convention. It was going to be held. They were doing it world tour, and one of them came to Manchester, which was interesting. And I did write a few different things, which went off to Chris Carter, and you see little elements being used in different episodes and stuff. But it was fun back then because it was exciting because you just never knew what was going to happen. And then you hear about, oh, well, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? So, it was interesting. But when the internet came along, a lot of new people came onto the scene. And I think you don't know who these people are. Because you tend to know all the people before the internet when you go to these events because you see the same faces and you get to know people. Yeah. But then all these newcomers came on the scene when the internet came, and they've all got big opinions and you don't know who they are. They became keyboard warriors, and that was the biggest problem. Really, is that we've lost that old methodology of communications. When you actually meet people, so it's a shame. So that's why I've always tried to maintain events and gatherings. So because it's it's like a cut back to the older days, really, when you can actually talk with people and communicate properly. Because the internet's caused a lot of problems over the years. It's a great resource, though.
I've got to mention your Awakening event that you've got coming up, because I went to an Awakening event.
Oh, did you? Which
the one in Manchester?
Oh, yes, yeah, Bowlers Mission Centre.
And I met some extraordinary people that I've kept as friends and that still talk to now. But they won't be my go-to people, I'm afraid, Steve, because you are that man.
Oh, I am.
If I need to know anything, Steve. No.
You do get people. I've had quite a few different events over the years. The new one that's coming up is the mini version, because we have larger and smaller ones. We call them satellite conferences. They're the smaller ones. Because you can't put the big ones together all the time. It takes too much planning. Sometimes the biggest events that we have, when we've got 2,500 people turning up, and the BBC and whatever, and celebrities and whatever, it takes sometimes about a couple of years planning, to arrange all that. So we like to do things a bit more regularly, so we'd have these small satellite ones. So we've got one coming up on May the 17th. Yeah. In Oldham, in Manchester, in the UK, and it's a full day event. But when we say a full day event, it's like 9:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. We really do unpack it. But what we've done this time is I sat back and had a good old think about conferences, and I know this from being invited to lecture all over the world at these, contacting the deserts and all these different places, and I'm tired of seeing the same thing. I'm tired of seeing. Don't get me wrong. It is interesting to listen to people's experiences, accounts, and that sort of thing. But maybe it's just me and the way I am now. But I like something a bit gritty where there's some evidence. Because, somebody can go up there and talk a good hour or two about something and there's no evidence. It's just a story, and I really, now I'm getting a bit long in the tooth. I'm just like, where's the evidence? Because to me, that's the most significant thing. I'm always trying to push forward and not stay in the same spot. So what I did is I had a good think about this upcoming event, and I thought, no, I want to base this event on new critical information with lots of evidence. It's not about the speaker. It's not, it's about the information, and I think we need to, I'm trying to encourage other people to do that on events because, people have said to me, I went and seen this with this person and he talked about the same thing he did last year. And I thought, well, that's a disheartening, really. You don't need to be doing that, to be honest with you. I've never, ever lectured the same thing at any place twice. You make a note, you just wouldn't do it. At the end of the day, you've got to show you're moving on. If you can't move forward, then you might as well just not bother.
What about doing something like, I don't see people doing it, but I know the UFO thing is really big at the minute. So taking people to do a skywatch with people there that could talk to you while you're there, boots to the ground, looking at the skies and learning something a bit different.
Well, we do have under the Awakenings Project Doorway expeditions where we do take people out. Yeah. There's a considerable amount of work is involved because as soon as you are an authority this is the problem now. Years ago, you'd have some guys running a group and tell let's take a team out there, go sky watching ourselves. Do you know what nowadays? You need health and safety, you need insurance, you need all these things. Because I'll tell you, if someone takes a fall, they can sue you. That's how crazy it has become. Being a business, which we are, limited business, we want to take people out, but the rigidity of it is crazy now. It's like, oh, well, we've got to have insurance, we've got to have health and safety, we've got to do all these things now, just in case someone falls over, or they have a bit of an unusual experience, or might not be a great experience. Who knows when you're going out there, but...
Make you sign a waiver. You agree to this if you come out with us.
You might not come back, sign that line there.
Yeah, you might get abducted. Who knows?
But it is crazy, honestly. It really is. I mean, that's what we've got to, our guys in the company say, look, you've got to always protect yourself liability-wise and everything because you're taking responsibility for those people you're taking out to a location and so on and so forth. But wow, how difficult it is nowadays compared to how it used to be. But we do that. We do take people out. We're also starting to introduce people to some of the experiments we're running as well. So yes, we are involved in those sort of things, so.
I think, is this the big project thing that's going on right now with you, Steve, though, the experiment sides?
Yeah, well, there's three things on the go, of course, we've got Project Doorway. We've got Phenomena Project, which is more the paranormal side, and we've got the UAP advanced studies as well. So we've got three areas now. The UAP advanced studies is because I'm in a number of think tanks, and I get to hear about information which is not always in the public domain. So there's certain things you can't put out there, but you get to find out. And you share that membership with people like Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis and Jacques Vallée, and so you get to hear about some of the things and the direction of the studies and things, which way it's going, what's going on in the background, what experiments and that sort of thing. But then in the paranormal, we really buckled down on the experiments with Phenomena Project. And that's about communication with non-human intelligences, NHI, the paranormal aspects of the mechanics of paranormal phenomena, how it works, how does it tick? We tear these things apart now. We don't go into the word haunting and poltergeist disturbances is just too big to try and understand the mechanics of it. So we tear them apart limb from limb, and we look at the tiniest little aspects to look at, what areas of research can we get involved in where it reveals a mechanism, an intelligent mechanism, which is a part of the process. And you keep doing that, you end up building a picture of what might be really going on here. But you know what? We're dealing with phenomena, and anybody who gets heavily involved in this realizes very quickly that, it just doesn't want to play the rules sometimes. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's deceptive. Sometimes they like to play tricks. Sometimes they won't tell you things. In fact, there's been times when they've said, we won't tell you. So sometimes they'll ignore certain questions if they don't want to answer them. Sometimes they'll just turn around and tell us they're not going to answer that. So, all we can do is just keep prying and gathering data as much as we can. But at least we're ahead of the curve, because we can't be static. It's not going to move forward, the understanding about this phenomenon. And I think it's like just no different than the UFO phenomena. Back in the day, my mentors in the early 80s were telling me it's a nuts and bolts craft. It's traveling the vast distances of space, to visit humanity. And they have obviously some type of technology, allows them to get here. Well, boy, hasn't that much changed over the years. And now we realize that old narrative won't cut it anymore. No. So the narrative is changing. You're starting to see the dropping of the word or the references to ETH, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, and the word extraterrestrials to be replaced with NHI, non-human intelligences, and interdimensional phenomena. So the narrative is moving, and it has to, because we can't. Now we've got technology that looks into space rigorously, and quickly realizing that, well, not much going on out there, but but hundreds, if not thousands, of UFOs are being seen around the planet Earth. So the question is that there doesn't seem to be some super highway going backwards and forwards. You get some bits, but there's super highway going backwards and forwards, according to NASA and a number of other people. So the big question is where are they coming from? And this is with hypothesis that they're punching through from some other reality and manifesting within our reality, and demanifest when they come about the business. But we look to be metaphysical in origin. Everything across the board, which we've looked at, be it the paranormal. You look at all these projects and brought together, 3 different projects. The biggest thing that stands out is metaphysicality. And that basically means that, that in the paranormal phenomenon, we might see an apparition that walks through a wall, but at the same time, it can turn around and pull your hair or pinch you. So they're obviously metaphysical in nature, in the aspects of paranormal phenomena. It seems to be across the board in the UFO phenomena that, people have, if you look at alien abduction accounts themselves, one of the most common features reported is that these entities walked through the wall or came through the ceiling or whatever. And yet they're quite capable of maneuvering you physically. So again, with this metaphysicality aspect, and even now when we're starting to look into some of the cryptid, and I say some of the cryptid phenomena, because it does seem to be a very physical aspect to some of these things, of course, not to get mixed up with cryptozoology, of course, because it's kind of a bit of a different, when we're talking about sort of the Bigfoots and the dogmen, werewolf type experiences, yes, they do happen, but they seem to just disappear, footprints that half of, you follow the footprints in the snow and then suddenly there's half a footprint and it's gone. It's like, where did it go? Or sometimes we've had over 100 reports of people which can hear Bigfoot and those type of things right close. Literally, you can hear them breathing, and you can see movement in the bush near them, and they know there's a big creature there, and yet they can't see it. It's like it's invisible to the naked eye. So there's a lot of aspects there, maybe the metaphysical aspects involved in some of these things. So it's very, very complicated. because I'm sure there are hyper-elusive creatures out there. Of course there will be, absolutely. How long did it take to find the panda when they realised that it was out there? Probably about 60 years, I think, before they found the next one, something like that, because it lives in the place where we just don't, we're not good. We're not good at getting through those jungles and things, but they're not that. They don't mean to be hyper-elusive, but some things are because of where they live.
Yeah.
It's a big planet, but humans tend to gravitate towards the oceans. They stay out of the big mountainous regions and the depths of the jungles and the forests and stuff. Who knows what's there at the end of the day in a physical aspect. So, yeah, I think there's that side of things as well. But some of these things are like cryptids when we were talking about, especially Ohio. I've had over 3,500 eyewitness reports of dogmen type encounters where these things have even pursued them. But it seems to be like it wants, the whole aspect of this is to scare the living daylights out of them. Because you'd immediately think anything like a dogman or werewolf, these things would be predators. You expect them to be. But there's been many accounts when you've been cornered by these things, or you've fallen over and this thing's running after you and it's stood over you. None of them lead to an attack. And any predator on the planet actually would naturally act. It's a meal ticket. If they pursued its prey and it's suddenly not running anymore, then usually the inevitable happens. But no, it's like it gives it up then. It runs away. It's like the whole aspect of this was to scare you, to scare the living daylights. It says there's quite a number of well-known incidents, but one of the best ones that stands out to me was 2 teenagers which were staying with the father during the summer holidays. Father works nights, by the way. He's doing a lodge, like a wood lodge cabin in a forested area. And they see this thing which looks to be, as they described, about 9 foot tall and very wide shoulders, head of a dog, walking upright, and it was seemingly pursuing them from the sideline of trees. Excuse me. And once they saw this thing, they were shocked. In fact, just prior to seeing this, they were taken over by fear, which is an indicator usually. So they were already heightened and looking around, thinking, why am I suddenly feeling so fearful? They knew this location well. This thing pursued them, so they ran for it. They got to the lodge, they got in, locked the door. Father's asleep upstairs. This thing comes up. Now, it could have gone right. The size of this thing could have gone right through the door. Could have gone through the window, because they're like that, looking out the window at this thing at the door. And it's got hold of the front handle and it's shaking it and going, ah. It's like what you do to scare kids, isn't it? Ah, sort of thing, and it was like all about generating fear. But the father, so much noise was happening with them screaming downstairs. He got up in a bit of an angry mood. What the hell's going on? Comes downstairs, no nonsense guy. And they're saying, Dad, don't open the door, don't open the door. And of course, he's not having any of this. Goes over to the door, locks it, opens it up, and comes face to face with this thing. He's looking up at this thing. And they just both paused. He's like in shock. But this thing, it just stood there looking at him. Yeah. Then it just ran off. So it's like, what the hell? And there's so many accounts of it's like fear generation.
Thank you.
And the only time you come across that is like parasitic type phenomenon, poltergeist disturbances, because that's about fear generation.
Yeah.
You're trying to think, well, what are those things? What is it about fear that they want? Well, because that seems to be the priority is about vexation and scaring your half to death.
Or is it that they want one of the byproducts here, like one of the pheromones that...
Very good point, Jonathan, because I looked into that because about fear pheromone release, and I talked with some scientists and they said, oh, well, do you know what? I don't think humans produce that anymore, let alone be able to detect it. And I argued the point with them because I looked at some tests that have been carried out, some experiments, and it was done on skydivers who were going skydiving for the first time. And the experiment where we put these special glands on them, these special pads, to collect the sweat and that sort of thing. And they also did it with just some runners running through the park on a Sunday like they normally do. And they took these patches back to the laboratory, and with the people, the volunteers that came in, they conducted some tests, and they discovered, it was quite fascinating, discovered that people were identifying the patches that generated fear. They could smell it. And I thought, well, it's not redundant, and it is there. So, maybe it's something to do with the fear pheromone gathering, and who knows? It's a mystery.
It's like you were saying, these creatures would be predators, but what are they predating on? If they are looking for some electrochemical
Yes.
Thing that the scared human beings are putting out, then they are getting their nutrients. They're getting whatever it is they want. They just aren't eating us.
Exactly, because they put a lot of effort into this. I mean, when you're talking about pursuing something, people have been running for almost half a mile halfway through. They put a lot of effort into it, only to get to them and not do what you'd inevitably do as a predator. But I think the process seems to be like gathering that pheromone, maybe. So we still got, we're still trying to process the learning and understanding behind these things, because like any other predator on the planet, we know the situation, what arises when the predator gets to the prey. Just doesn't seem to be the case, and that's when we started thinking, what reward is it in it for it then? Why all that effort?
It's like a cat, isn't it? Like playing with a bird before it decides to kill it. Is it getting satisfaction from playing?
It's got to be. Yeah, it's an unusual situation, but there are hundreds and hundreds of reports like this, and not just from the US, other places. Even dogmen, werewolf-type creatures have been notably identified and reported in Australia. So there's quite a number of them knocking around. But, and it's interesting when you go back in history and you talk about the mythology of these creatures and things, and you think, was it always mythology, or was there actually incidents that were reported and believed, and therefore they wrap the mythology around some of these official sightings, and it's like that with a lot of different things, and I've learned over the years that it is not impossible to see anything, because I've seen some crazy things in my time, things that shouldn't exist. And I hadn't been with somebody who also saw them.
Yeah.
But there was an unusual things that do take place. When we have those encounters, the phenomena causes something, it's called cognitive limitation. So you don't act normally at the time of the incident. You might see this thing, but normally you'd be, what the hell is that sort of thing? Or if you've got a camera, you'd be taking photos. If you're in a vehicle, you'd just slam the brakes on, jump out of the car, pursue, whatever. People just don't. I didn't on many occasions. I don't act normally. And then it's about maybe, I don't know, a few minutes later when you're down the road a bit or whatever, then suddenly you spring to life in mind and go, did you just see what I just seen? And then oh my God, and it's like, why didn't I do that? I mean, I'm happy to pursue. Don't bother me now. I'm too old in the tooth to be messed about with. But I didn't. And I didn't act upon it. And it was really, really weird. And somehow that takes over your cognitive limitation, your ability to act out normally during the experience.
I'm sorry my camera keeps on blanking out. It's because Lilith trying to sit on it.
I know. You can see it's like a dog man right next to you there.
And by the way, when I say Lilith, I'm not talking about the Babylonian snake.
No, I would hope not.
Black cat.
She's gorgeous. We don't mind. But you know what I find really interesting, and I think I touched on it last time I spoke to you, Steve, was when I go out investigating with Dan, and he's about as psychic as a brick. Doesn't feel, doesn't see, nothing ever happens. He just likes going out and having the social aspect of investigating and just see if we do get anything. But when I go out with this particular person, things seem to always happen. And it's like our energy seems to complement one another. And for someone who doesn't see, feel, hear nothing, when I'm with him,
you do,
and something has happened, he sees it. He sees exactly the same thing that I'm seeing without me even telling him.
Yes.
And now,
yes.
This is what makes me sort of wonder, like, is he picking up on my energy? Are we actually seeing the same thing at the same time? Is it really there?
It's a good question, that, because, you know, I mean, I don't talk about really personal experiences, you know, because there was a time when, you know, when you're doing, being as a researcher and involved in experimental things, we never said, because we used to think people might think it's bias, you know.
Yeah.
You can't give a true opinion if you're an expert, and that's not true. It's actually the opposite. I think it's beneficial.
Yeah.
You know? So times have changed. So once that happened, maybe 8 years ago, I decided, well, do you know what? I'm not bothered if I say, you know, I'm an expert. So yeah, you know, and I had my first experience when I was 7, and I continue to have experiences right through to this day. So it's just part of my life. But what I realized is that when I am with company, then somehow the experience is enveloped from me to them as well. So you will experience what I experience, or they'll see what I see, you know, and that it's an unusual. They might have never had an experience until one night they decide to go out with me, and, you know, hey presto.
Yeah.
So I think it's somehow it kind of, I don't know if it's consciously, I think it's something to do with the consciousness and how we connect with other people, maybe, you know, because I've had people said, oh, I've never experienced anything. And then, you know, they have done whilst they've been out with me for the very first time. You know, for me, it's a normal thing, but for them, it was like real big deal. And I see that happening so many times that I think it kind of envelopes over to the circle of people around you. And you start getting into this conscious studies then, really, and about how possibly it's connected with other people.
Yeah, because I think at that point, I remember having an argument with Dan, and it's quite funny because we were live at the time and trying to get it on film, which obviously we couldn't. And then he's calling whatever these things were closer to us, and I'm like terrified. He's the calm one. I'm terrified. I'm saying, no, let them stay where they are. And he's going, no, come forward, come closer to us so we can, you know. I'm like, Dad, stop calling them. You know, there's more of them than there is of us. You know, and it turned out to be quite a bit of a comedy show to other people watching. But at the time, I was deadly serious. I was ready to punch them on the nose. Do not call them. Leave them there. We don't know what they are. Yeah, but we can find out what they are if they come close. No, Dan.
No, it's certainly, I mean, there is ominous things out there, and certainly I've come to identify them. You can sense the difference. You can feel the difference. And it's like when you've had quite a traumatic experience with something which you might refer to as a little bit more darker than normal. It's like the taste of a lemon. You never forget that taste when it's that same feeling, that ominous, wrapping darkness feeling around you, and your reaction to it, and you think to yourself, okay, this is not something I want to invite to me. You know, I recognize it. It recognizes me, and you go about your business. I'm going to go about mine. You know, and I don't really try and engage with them. There has been times when I've had to. I mean, but it's a handful. When you're talking about real bad stuff, it's a handful of them over the 41 years. But you know, but it's that is a place for itself. And even during one experiment, even I backed off and said, well, do you know what? That's reached my threshold. I don't, you know, and if you want to carry on, you carry on, and I'm going to take a step back. And I went back. It was an outdoor experiment, and I went back and sat in the car. And while the experiment was going on, there was noises going on in the car, and we had some pens in the middle part of the car, and all the pens are moving around on their own in the car, whilst outdoors the experiment's continuing. But I stepped away from that experiment because it was getting a bit extreme, you know. So yeah, there were, I'm not daft, I mean, it's some people will tell you, I'm not scared of anything and I don't care. And I just think, no, I don't believe a word of that, because these things are, and it is terrible. And when they engage, your whole instinct, it just says, whoa, that's I'm out, And I say, look, you go off your instinct. If you feel that, then why would you want to call in? Some things would love to be beckoned in, but no, I stay clear of those.
Unless it's a dog man, because I do need it. I want another dog in the house. So if it's a dog man that comes and goes, and you don't have to feed so much, and then because Jonathan might want to do a few experiments on him, travel to Jonathan's house, put the dog in the back,
Well, then Archie would probably get offended. So,
but no, jokes aside, though, that it's quite fascinating, the whole thing, the whole genre. But I still have to. You know me. I'm a researcher. I'm an investigator. I'm a medium, as you know, Steve. But I have this. And it's become more cynical the older I'm getting. And maybe it's social media. Oh, there was a sighting of Pigman. And and we know exactly what it was. I mean, I had to go there. And as soon as we got into the car park of this particular place where this sighting happened, straight away. And I said to Jonathan, and when I told him, he says, you've got to write the report. I said, I will. It's a dogging site. And somebody's put on a mask because they want to hide.
I know exactly the location. I've been there several times, and I know what was going on there. And in fact, when I was actually being interviewed at that location on film, I had 4 other people walk up and stood round.
In this car.
They were missing the party. And I didn't know at the time, but that was the situation. But I know about the Pigman, and I had got an idea about that as well. So,
but the thing is, people tend to sort of jump with it and say, "Oh yeah, it's a Pigman." When I went there, I was quite disappointed. It's like, no, it's a dog.
Yeah, it was for me. I mean, I got called in because of the Black Eyed Kids and stuff, and the newspapers all over it. And I went there, and there were no Black Eyed Kids around, and I was. But I mean, I understand there's a little bit of a footprint now, and there's been UFO activity, and there's, some cryptid stuff. There's definitely some cryptid stuff. I've interviewed some of the people that witnessed some of these things. One of them would come out from the bushes into the road in front of them when they were traveling in the vehicle, which really bothered them. There was definitely a footprint of stuff there. But then you've got the whole jumping on it a little bit, and people wearing masks, trying to make a name for themselves, and all sorts of different things going on. I know, and I know you know. So, it does go on, and it's a shame, but it's just that's what happens. And there were people walking past with the dogs, and they would just sort of say, "Oh, have you seen anything? Have you heard anything?" And this, that, and the other. So it's like people really get into it. I like to be out in the places where we don't have that, because I do a lot of experiments in the really rare locations where you just don't get people, mountains, deserts, jungles, and things like that. And what I've discovered is that there is phenomena out there, and this is the phenomena that tends to shy away from human activity. It doesn't want to be known. It doesn't, and you feel you're being intrusive there. And sometimes it displays things where it just doesn't, it's just not happy that you're there. So there are places like that, and it's usually places where, there isn't much of a human footprint there, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's strange when you go somewhere where everybody tells you, hi, Robert, everybody tells you that you're going to have a big spooky paranormal experience, and you go there and feel absolutely nothing.
I know. Yeah.
Like either of you two been to the Medmenham Caves at West Wickham? I went there and I felt absolutely bugger all.
Yeah,
sausage.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people say, "Oh, don't go down in the cellar. There's a demon down there." You know what? I go down on my own. Don't bother. Sit in the dark, sat there waiting, and give it a couple of hours. Nothing. You know, and that's just the way. But you know what? People think, "Oh, well, you're a skeptic," and if you're a skeptic, you won't engage with you. So I'm not a skeptic.
Oh, nonsense. That's
yeah. I know, it's just, you know, so I'm not a skeptic. I'm very attuned to, you know, I've had plenty of experiences. So, you know, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's as simple as that. But, you know, you get these areas where I call them the grey area, so excuse the pun, but it's where you've got places where you can go and you'd say nothing happened. And then people you know go and they say, I experienced something. So, you know, like, I'll give you a typical example. East Drive, for an example. Yeah. Now, I know many people, researchers, have not experienced nothing, but I also know some have. So it's like, well, you know, and it can be quite selective. Sometimes it can be down to the individuals, their consciousness, and how phenomena interacts with them. You know, so just because we don't experience something in some places doesn't mean someone might not. It just has to. You just have to say, don't you? You have to say, well, it's fallen on my shoulders. I went there. I didn't witness anything. I never turn around and say, I don't believe anything's going on there, because there's always the opportunity that it could rear its face one day and basically call you out. I just basically say, I didn't find any evidence there. You know, and
I think you can't go there the once and expect it to happen. I think you've got to keep going, because they're not performing monkeys. They're not going to appear and do something because you wanted to.
Well, yeah, it's just the normal way humans think. It's like, well, we're in control and we demand some type of experience to show that you exist. You know, who are we? Who are we at the end of the day to try and master the phenomena? The phenomena is beyond even our complexity of understanding, to be honest with you, how this thing's taken, and how it wants to communicate or not.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think we can become quite complacent, thinking that we should have the answers. Well, even that's debatable, even if we should have some of these answers, to be honest with you.
Well, I told Jonathan, I was so excited. I went to Cambridge University to a lecture, and it was an astronomy lecture. And by sheer chance, I learned something quite useful to my field of paranormal research. And the lecture was about the aura. I can't say that second name, whatever it is.
Aurora Borealis.
Yeah, that one. And they were talking about the Earth and how the Earth rotates on its axis, and how the core rotates. And there's another bit inside that rotates. And then they were talking about the planets and how some of them rotate, and the sun. And it was really interesting. It was right over my head. But what they mentioned was when there was a disruption with the rotation, for example, the sun. So when there's a disruption, it creates loops, and then the sun eventually ejects one, and you get the sun flares.
Yes.
So what happens with our Earth that rotates, and something happens to disrupt that rotation? Now, could that be the reason why some people experience, because they're sensitive to the electromagnetic fields changing, which is natural?
Yeah.
And others don't. And that's why you get mediumship, and others don't. And it just opened up this Pandora's box. And I thought, well, this is just beyond me.
We have, I mean, magnetic fields change every day, from day to night, actually, from sun up to sun down. The magnetic fields will change. We do know through experiments that paranormal phenomena, environmentals are a factor in regarding results. You know, so we have to conduct the experiments when we feel that it's the best time to achieve a good result, and that environmentals do come into it. But then, you know, you do have solar activity, and you do get magnetic anomalies. Some of them are associated to what is referred to as diffusion regions in space, which causes these, they're like a portal, really, to be honest with you, these diffusion regions.
Create a loop, doesn't it? Like this, and you get pulled into it.
Exactly. So there's a lot of energies and a lot of stuff going on that we just not aware of. I think our ancestors probably were much more aware of things like that than even modern day humans are, because we know that from building certain ancient sites in geomagnetic locations, and so they knew and they felt these things. They didn't have equipment, so they must have been ahead of the game. And it seems like we've just lost, or some have, or most of us have, the ability to sense some of these things, and where the veil is thin, to be able to communicate with the other side. That seems to be a common factor throughout many cultures around the world, that there were key locations. A lot of these places had height, and this is like the top of mountains, and it leads into the stories like Mount Olympus and the gods. The Nephilim that came to the mountain regions and stuff. It's like with height.
Moses going up the mountain
exactly. Yeah, exactly the same thing. But there are stories all over the world: China, Japan, Africa, you name it. And when you look at them, it's like, well, they were interacting with phenomena and communicating, and there must have been areas of where they knew the veil was thin. But these are places where they're not living. They're not going. They don't live there. They travel there. Like holy caves of India, for an example. Where a non-human intelligence, you have to say it is, because it wasn't identified as being human, which they referred to it to be a deity, is still prayed to by hundreds of thousands of people every year in India, and they have to trek there because it's not a place, it's high ground, it's not a place where they live. So it's like all over the world, and it's strange that they go to such effort to do that. So it's as if they must have known these locations somehow. Strange.
I think it's fascinating personally. I love it.
I've been to quite a few of these things, around the world. These places. Not too long ago, I was on the top of the mountains in Spain. So I would like to check out these locations. But you know what? I was surprised that some of these places do exist. They do have phenomena, and you know what? You're unlikely to see another person around. It's really not many people there. But and phenomena goes about its business, And when you talk to people that do live up there, which are just like some farmers or shepherds and things like that, they have their own stories. I mean, they just have their own stories to tell. They haven't even got their own names for the phenomena. It's like, well, and when you ask them about it, and you kind of don't understand what you're trying to say here. I mean, this is not normal, and you think, well, they're used to it. They've been seeing it for years, So, but it goes on all over the place, all over the world.
If people want to read about this phenomena, they can look at the Phenomena magazine, can't they? Because you do a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the magazine comes out free every month, and not just in English, in multiple languages. And it is a different magazine completely as well. So it's not like a different language version of the same magazine. It's different, standalones. But it's totally free because it's about networking and it's about giving out information. I don't believe anybody should be really selling magazines anymore, not with the power of the internet these days. Why was anybody going to, when you go to the shop shelf and look at some of these magazines, like £5-6, you think,
I know.
The internet is there. Everybody's pretty much got it. There's a wealth of information there. So I was always very aware about, I like to put information out freely if I possibly can and continue to do so. And we're always moving forward with researchers from all over the world with their work. But we are moving forward because we don't tend to run just many, what I refer to as just like spooky stories. There's elements of, the investigation, the research, some of the scientific stuff that's been happening. Because I think people want a little bit more now, not just a ghost story. In other words, well, what equipment did you have? And, you know, and did you capture anything? And did you analyze any of the things that were captured and things like that? You know, people really are looking for a little bit more now. So, and we do get a lot of that into the magazine. So yeah, we share as much information as we possibly can. And it's the amount of information that we have, it just continues. So we could just carry it on forever, really, the magazine. And I think it's been going, must be 16 years now, surely.
Is it really 16 years?
16 years, yeah. Yeah, it's a long time.
Nearly as old as your one, Jonathan. How old is your one?
1994. So I'm not 31.
Yeah. That's a hell of a long time, yeah. Yeah.
2 oldies together, eh? I'm in good company.
No, you're not. You're the young.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
One. We're the 2 old codgers.
With age comes wisdom, as they say.
Yes, yeah. That's true.
Oh shit! We're doing something wrong then.
Yeah.
But I must say, when you get Steve and Barry Fitzgerald together in the same room, your head just gets blown apart. So don't even try and understand what they're talking about. You just won't keep up.
We work well together, myself and Barry. Barry comes from a different. We complete each other in a sense of speaking, because we both come out from different sides, meet in the middle, and his research is just as warranted as mine in regarding the speciality of it. But when we bring these things together, it becomes quite interesting, because you start to realize that we are dealing with the same thing here. You might have different names, and but it is the same thing, despite where you're coming from. And it sort of paints a picture. So we like to really get into the nitty-gritty stuff. We're well beyond the fact that, are they here? Does phenomena take place? That's, it's just pointless even going there now, because we've witnessed it firsthand. And we've interacted with it firsthand. So, and some of them are profound experiences, but we do know that it's consciously tied, So, because we've been in places, we've been in deserts and all sorts of places and witnessed phenomena firsthand. We knew actually where to go through, because what we did is, when we gathered all the data from our experiments and test results, we have to prove the hypothesis of the science. So you have to reverse it and say, okay, let's reverse it now and say, okay, well, let's prove it. Let's prove that we now know this location will be active. Let's go there. And of course, we prove the hypothesis through the actions that take place there. It comes full circle, because that's what science wants you to do. It wants you to prove your hypothesis. So we did it from the other way around as well. So yeah, there are key locations that phenomena likes to certainly manifest around the world.
Did you ever find, because I know about the story of the singing stones, or the singing, the rock face that was singing.
Yeah.
Did you ever find out what caused that, or is it still a big conundrum? Because
no, it's we don't know. It's a phenomena in itself. I mean, I'll give you an example. There's a mountain in Ireland. I went up there with Barry, and I think, what was it called? I think it's Whistling Mount or something like that. And when you get up there, you can hear it. But if you talk about it, it stops and doesn't come back for a few minutes, and then it starts again. And it's like I don't know how, but as soon as you mention it, as soon as you talk about it, it will stop. It doesn't make any sense.
Is it always the same note, or does it change?
It changes. Yeah, it changes, and you can hear it. And but it suddenly abruptly stops as soon as even if you go over, for an example, you go over and whisper it in Barry, even a whisper in Barry's ear about it, it's gone. So it's definitely kind of, must be somehow consciously connected to the land or something. But how can that happen? And you put it through test, and how can that happen? It just weird. I don't understand it. But Ireland is full of places like that.
Yeah.
because I've been through Round Island a few times with Barry, and I've experienced things there which I thought I would never experience in any place. To be honest with you, Ireland's quite unique in regarding its ancient places and mysterious things that happen there. And myself and Barry, I think last time we were there was we went to one location which is kind of a location where you'd say it's kind of a portal there. It's I think it's referred to as there's one place called Devil's Island, and and it's got these weird names, and there's not only there've been sightings of strange sea creatures around this island, some of which has caused people in boats to experience these things, and they panicked and come in and stuff. But it's in the same location, this island, where these things have been seen. And even whilst we were there was a disc, there was a flying object that flew into that location, so, and it's hard to imagine, but we're trying to chase this thing down a country road. And the problem is that the country road is never straight in Ireland. It's like, whew, and you think, oh no, it's over there. Turn right here, Barry, and we're trying to. And it's so hard. We need a straight line, and the road's going like this and going like this, and so we lost it. But it's interesting because such things do happen. And that was during the day, just randomly, whilst we're being in a location. So it's just strange. But Ireland's got so much stuff, so many strange things there.
I've not heard of the singing stone.
You've not heard of that?
No, tell me more. I am fascinated.
Well, I mean, it's on its way to. There's an old mine up there from many years ago where they were mining, and it's part of the same mountain. And you could say, well, okay, maybe there's some strange geology taking place there because of the mining of that mountain. But the peak of it, basically you're above the cloud. You park up, all you can see around you is really cloud, to be honest with you, because you're above it. But you can hear it. And we stopped the car, we got out, and I didn't know why I was there. But he told me about, and I could hear it. I definitely heard it. And then he said, because he said beforehand, obviously, you talk about it, he just stopped. And I thought it was just sort of it's just one of those things that people say, but it does. And as soon as you mention anything about, can you hear that sound, or, are you listening to that noise, or anything like that, it just stops. And it's silent. I mean, when I say silent, deadly silent. There's nothing up there. The birds are up there.
Is it recordable?
It is recordable. Barry's recorded it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a sound that can be recorded in the harmonic range. Yeah.
You don't know what key it's in, but
well, Barry will probably know because he's done more research than I have. I was too shocked at the time, but he's done extensive research. He's got a lot of strange things recorded, over the time, and from the land producing sounds. Of course, he looked for many years. He looked into the hum. There's quite an unusual humming sound that takes place there on the shoreline. It was some people came forward after doing research and said, well, it's the currents, and it's the way the tide hits the surface of the rocks along the shoreline, and this, that, and but it wasn't. But he's done quite a bit of research on that as well. So, but there is places there which they're just strange places where these things happen, and there's no explanation. Nobody really comes up with a good explanation, except the fact is that it seemingly is intelligent sometimes, because it seemingly stops when you talk about it. So my test is, next time I go to Ireland, is I want to go up there, but I'm not going to talk about it. I want Barry to write it down so I can read it and see if it does stop. Because if it does stop, it's something to do with consciousness. Yeah. But if it doesn't stop, it's because it's something listening into our reaction. So I want to know, does it stop if you write something's wrote down and you read it? you know.
There's a cove in the far west of Cornwall which has got a series of mermaid reports linked to it. But there's also, for the last 150 years, there has been something that they say haunts the place called the hooper, which makes a whooping noise.
Oh.
Yeah. And nobody knows what, nobody knows why, nobody knows how, but since at least the 1850s, there's been a whoop noise coming out of the sea in this
strange
Tenon Cove in West Cornwall, and that's what I immediately thought of when you spoke about the singing stones, because I've heard in other places in the world about rocks and caves that can sing.
Well, what we tend to do, and I know Barry more so than me anyway, really, is research. When we're on location and we've been to caves, the last one we were at, an experiment was carried out there, generating various different frequencies being pushed into the cave. And there was one frequency where the cave reacted to the point where even Barry got out of there. And not much scares him, but he got out of there. There was an immediate retaliation to one of the frequencies that he produced through electronic. He has equipment, which is there, but it was like an immediate retaliation. Get out of here, sort of thing. And obviously, that was immediate and was very effective. To be honest with you, they've locked up this cave entrance now. You can't get in there. So it's and it's owned. Somebody's actually bought it. And it's like, it's a cave. I don't know why someone just buys a cave, but it's actually privately owned.
Well, if I had the money, I'd buy a haunted cave. I mean,
I'm sure I would as well, actually, yeah. But I was there at the time when he was conducting this experiment. It was very strange because the resonance, you know, it was sweeping across the frequencies to find the resonance of the cave. But at one particular frequency, it's just the whole thing just seemed to change, and you know, and he was in there, and yeah, he got out of there fast. You know, just like a retaliation to a certain frequency.
Well, there's one of the chambers in one of the Great Pyramids that is supposed to sing to you.
Yes, I have heard that.
There was a mate of mine, a guy called Nick Turner, who I don't know if he was sax player in Hawkwind, but he's dead now, but he swore blind whenever we spoke about it that he went into that chamber in the pyramid with his sax and was playing a duet with the song of the rocks in the pyramid.
I believe that can happen. I know of a number of incidents around the world where there has been communications, musical communication, you could say, in a sense of speaking, you know, with various frequencies and things. It's how we go about it. And I do think there is a form of, sometimes in some places, there's something to do with consciousness there. It's like you can't just happen for anybody, you know, but it happens to certain people, you know, can happen a lot. But there's lots of stories about that, you know, those interactions with stone. It's strange. You think, well, we know chemically, you know, and what these stones consist of. What is it? You know, it's another aspect. I don't know. Are we? Is it people? Because I think what we do is we focus a lot on the experiments. We focus a lot on the incidents that are happening, but don't focus on the individuals very often. And do those individuals have some form of expanded consciousness? Yeah. And it is that helps them to do this, engage with the stones and the land.
But they say that stones, I mean, think about crystals. Crystals are crystals, but they're a form of stone. And they react differently with different people. So why not?
Remember, everybody's body chemistry is different. It's why medicine is not an exact science, because 20 milligrams of aspirin might cure your headache, but it won't cure
Yes,
Rhodes' headache.
that's it.
But everybody's body chemistry and biorhythms are different.
That's true. Very true. That does happen.
What you've just done there. It went
Yes,
like that.
as soon as I mentioned biorhythms, it gave me a thought.
It happens to me that when I'm having just a one-to-one communication with somebody and suddenly these thumps come up. What's going on?
It only happens when I'm in the same chat and thing as Viv. And it always
I've got your hands are here.
It happens to me.
I don't trust you, Vivian.
But that's very true. You're absolutely right. No two people are exactly the same. No two people.
They say everything vibrates. When they say everything vibrates, I don't think people realise we vibrate at different frequency or certain frequency. So everything's got a frequency and it's tapping into a different frequency to pull information. And this is what people don't understand, I think.
I think it's not just frequency. I think you are right. I mean, it's certainly frequency, but there's more to it than just frequency, because we would expect that, if something vibrates so fast, that it becomes a non-solid, because it's only because it's the chairs and the tables we feel is because if they were to change the frequency and resonate at a certain amount, it would no longer be solid to us, because we're stuck in a certain plane. But there's been experiments, and in 1999, advanced skull work. Items were unable to be picked up because they changed the physics of the item. The phenomena did, so you could see it, but you couldn't put your hand right through it. It looked solid. Apparently, you can shine light off it. It casts shadow, so you'd say it's real.
Yeah,
but your hand goes right through it. Now that got me to thinking, because I have quite a number of photographs of what is assumed to be apparitions. But isn't it interesting when they leave a shadow?
Yes.
Oh, very, very interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting. Because how did he leave a shadow? And that's what I think. What the hell? I've got an image of half a person, but it's the shadow of it, and it's what is going on here? Just us trying to understand the physics behind that alone.
Then again, smoke can leave a shadow, can't it?
Say that again, Jonathan.
Smoke can leave a shadow.
Smoke can leave a shadow, yes. Yeah, smoke can. Light doesn't leave a shadow. Light on light. I mean, if you've got a beam of light and I hold another beam of light to the side of it, it won't cast any shadow on the wall.
No.
Light doesn't create shadow. But when you're dealing with an item that you can pass your hand through and yet looks physical, as if it was really there, and you can shine light on it and it will reflect light and it casts shadow, so it's capable within the visual spectrum to react to light and shadow, and yet in a physical sense it's not there that you can touch it. And that was demonstrations done by the phenomena during the experiments to show their capabilities of metaphysicality, that they have the will to do so, is make something not physical, and yet you would not know. You'd not know it to see it. So and you talk about poltergeist, when only these things disappear, or the things drop from the ceiling and stuff. I mean, I've been in cases. I was one in Leicester. I was upstairs in a bedroom, and a coin dropped from height in the room. But what was interesting is that it sounded like it landed on floorboards, but it's carpeted. It was carpeted, you see. But below us, directly below us, was other members of the team, and it went right through and into their room downstairs and fell and hit the floor. But it temporarily hit the floor in the room upstairs because you could hear it hit the floorboard, but it was carpeted, so it shouldn't have really even heard the sound of the floorboard. It was, we're trying to understand the physics that's involved in this. This is what I refer to as paranormal mechanics. We are trying our best to break down, the elements of phenomena, how it must be able to, what's it need to be able to do what it does. Because if we find that, then we know that is not introduced into our normal physics box. We have to, it's outside that physics. Maybe we need to start looking about how that introduces into the world of physics and understanding that we have, and bring these together, because very rigid, our world of physics. It's like it is or it isn't, black and white. There's no room for any grey area in there. But with this other realm of physics, which is associated with paranormal physics, it's like, well, where does that fit in? Because it does fit in, because it happens within our reality. So it's me.
When you had that stone that fell down, did it feel warm?
It was warm to the touch, yeah. It was 15 degrees. Yeah. Now, we thought...
ports.
Yeah, well, our ports are usually... Yeah, they usually are. I mean, we do measure them, and they are warm. Now, is it the transposition of passing through solid items causes the heat process? We don't know. I mean, we could say, are the atoms of the item shifted so fast that it allows them to pass through walls and ceilings? And that's what causes, it's like rubbing your hands together, atoms, it generates heat. And that's what we're seeing. But we went one further, because we looked into analysing, because people don't analyse them. We thought, well, why don't they? We looked into analysing some of these apports, and they were significantly different than what you would find to match it with. In other words, if you had the identical item somewhere else, the apport would not analyse up the details. The conclusion on the analysis reports does not match as it should do if it was the real thing that left, of an example. So why is that? Why do they have unusual diathermic reactions in them and stuff? Diathermic reactions are very unusual. They're very identifiable. There's a certain type of diathermic reactions that take place in our ports. But what we discovered was, when people we've done quite a number of poltergeist type disturbances over the years, and when people, the apport was found to have been, that this had been moved, it's an apport, it was in the kitchen, now it's somewhere here. And they kept it, of course, in the home, and they had these disturbances continued. But then sometime later, the following year or whatever, they decided to do some alterations in the house and knock the wall out between the room. And as they were breaking through the wall, not the wall, the item, the object that disappeared was between the wall. They went back into the room. They went back into the room, and they had two of the items identical. One was the apport, one was the real object. So the apport was a mimic of the object, in a sense of speaking. We had it with a little pot mouse, a little pot cat, and then suddenly there's two little pot cats. And you get, well, there's only ever one pot cat, and that seemed to have been the apport. But what the phenomenon seemingly did is it took the actual real item and put it in the wall and mimicked it and put another item out, which you would not know the difference. And we realised, why would phenomena go to that length? And we thought to ourselves, well, I wonder if it's about deliverance of phenomena to that location. It's like it puts something in the location so it knows where to deliver phenomena to.
Yeah.
Well, if it's present all the time, like phenomena like poltergeist stuff, just sat there twiddling its hand thinking what to do, surely it'd know where to deliver the phenomena to. But what if the phenomena isn't sat there thinking what to do? Maybe it's just delivering from somewhere else. Maybe it might even be dealing with number of homes. Because how many times we have disturbances like poltergeists and people say, I've got something here, it doesn't even belong to me. It's not mine. Well, could it just be going like this? Swapping them around from one house to another?
What happens in the case of, like, this, I'm going to mention the Skull experiment, when they had an apport, which was a newspaper.
Oh,
A very old newspaper that when it appeared on the table, it was like it was pristine. It was brand new.
It looked like it come straight off the press from 1936. It was fully analysed, and it was concluded at the time of the investigation that, well, this is authentic. This is as if it's come off the press. It's like 1936. What was very unusual is that they placed it in a glass case, sealed, and kept it out of UV, just sealed away. But we had professionals were brought in to look at the paper because it was browning so fast.
Yeah.
And they realised from the incident it happened to, say, 1998, it literally aged from 1936 to 1998 within that just given year.
Yeah.
And it was like hyper-accelerated age back to how it would have been. For instance, you just kept a newspaper from 1936. And it browned so fast that they said it was approximately aging 500 days per day. That's what it was saying, so, and it browned that quick. So it caught up in a sense, like, so maybe time is something associated with apports, which are old things. Maybe there is a time. But I mean, when you're dealing with coins and things, you're not going to see. You could put a coin on your shelf and leave it for 100 years and go back to it. It'll look just the same pretty much as you'd left it 100 years prior. But a newspaper, and you biogrades and like and metal, coins and things like that. You're not going to see degradation so much. But when
have you ever had a living apport?
A what? Sorry,
a living apport.
No, they don't deal biologics.
They do.
Do they?
The weirdest, and this, if you next time you speak to him, Viv, ask Richard Freeman to.
Confirm. I know Richard well, so I'll ask him.
No, he's a sweetie, Richard. Richard and I used to share a house together.
Yes, yeah.
It was getting towards. It was in the autumn. It was cold, so we got all the windows and doors shut. And I can't remember what we were doing, but we were doing something that was mildly intense. And suddenly there was a thumping noise.
And
there, in the middle of the carpet was a small green frog.
A small green frog.
Yeah.
Well, that's odd because
that for what it's worth.
It's strange because I've looked all over cases all over the world for evidence of biological apports, even if it's plants, anything like that. And I've not got a single, honest to God, I have not got a single case of anything which is a biologic apport.
There's the case, he's passed away now, but Norman Fahey at Castle Rising, the visitors, when I say visitors, the dead visitors of Castle Rising got to know him, and he would every night when he locked the castle up, he would thank them, call them his friends, shut the doors, and then one day he was the last one to leave, the first one to go in the morning. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, when he opened the main doors, halfway up the stairs to get into the main part of the building, there were white roses placed there for him.
Yes.
No one would have access to it.
Well, that happened. I mean, it's happened through seance where, in fact, Skull, one was still stuck in the ceiling, half manifested. Still stuck there. Yeah. He was. And they are, true. I mean, they are assumably biological. But what they were saying basically is that when you analyze the biologics of the biological, what do they call it now? The biological and chemical traumatology test departments or something, and you look into the plants, that there is difference. You go and cut a rose from your garden and look and analyze that compared to the one through manifestation. There is a difference. Something gone different in it. I don't know if it's strangely altered by some form of method. And that's so where they use that difference to say, because how do you know it's biologic if because you'd expect it to say be exactly the same as, for instance, you go and get another green frog, you analyze that green frog and it's identical to that green frog, then you'd say, okay, that's interesting. But you find that that green frog is not the one of, if it was an apple, there'd be something different in it that you wouldn't normally see in a normal same type of green frog. You've always got to have these things bench tested. That's the problem. That means that you've always got to have a duplicate to test it against, because you can't test anything without what you're testing against for. So not always very rarely do you actually get an absolute duplicate. I was lucky because it's been a mug from a set of 4 mugs, or it's been an item where there's more than one of them. But I remember a lot of poltergeist stuff going on in homes, and there was a plant that got suddenly appear in another room, but it turned out to be artificial. It was an artificial plant, so still a lot to, of course, I've still got a lot to learn about this, but yeah, there's some strange, the manifestation process, it means that they can govern through our rigid reality of solidness, and it just seems to be the same for the UFO phenomenon, because we have reports of UFOs going into the ground, going into volcanoes, going into hillsides, as if they can pass right through into solid matter. And when they go into the water, the sea, they don't leave any wakes, so as if it's not physical in nature. Or they go past a plane and they're expecting to leave a wake, a shake in the sky, and it doesn't. So I think there's aspects of this metaphysicality right across the whole board. But what's interesting? The diathermic reaction in a mug that we got from a poltergeist case, it was analysed at Lancaster University, atomic microscopy. And I went through 3 different layers of research on that. And he identified a diathermic reaction which was almost identical to the diathermic reaction found in plants that had been adversely affected with a UFO that came down to ground, and it affected the plants. And the diathermic reaction in the plants was very, very close to the diathermic, if not identical to the diathermic reaction in this aborted mug. So we have to when we were interviewing the people at the UFO, they said, well, we were driving past and it didn't fly in. It just appeared. It kind of manifested there and it was on the ground. And then it kind of shrunk into a light and disappeared. So we always start to think, I wonder if the manifestation process, the physics is involved here, physics of a UFO just spontaneously appearing, or the physics of an apport spontaneously appearing, are they utilising some type of physics that we're unaware of? Both of them, which are very similar. But
I'm sure they are. I don't like the word paranormal very much, because I think these things are perfectly normal. We just don't understand what they are.
That's it. And when we come up with these names, it's like, it's just too vast. It's too big a name. Everything under that banner, paranormal. We say, well, okay, what is normal? Well, someone somewhere had to draw a line somewhere and say, well, this is normal. But then you end up with natural and supernatural, or preternatural. It gets very complicated. I think we need to expand. It's just expanding our knowledge, and science has to catch up. But when science is built within the rigidity of this wall, this box, and when you start to try and climb out of the box, you're attacked by the people in the box to say, oh, no, we don't deal with quantum physics and we don't get into this and we don't get into... but we do have to, because we're limited, because we keep trying to work it out by staying in the box.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. It just doesn't fit.
No, I agree totally. Ken Shields because Doc Shields was a mate of mine. He died last year, God help us.
Oh.
The old boy. But he always used to say that he thought that apports and Fafrotsky's fish and frog falls were the same thing.
Well, I know I've heard about fish falls and frog falls and things like that. You know, and most of the scientists will want to turn around and say it's rare atmospheric phenomena. It's causes them to be taken up high into the atmosphere and then travelled across and dropped. But they can be still alive, even fish, actually. Because they do fall and they're flopping around on the floor. And yet they're 4,000 miles from the ocean. You know, and you think, well, how did they stay alive?
I had to do for one, I can't remember which of the TV shows it was, Strange but True, I think.
Oh, yes.
Do a fish fall so I could talk about them. And I went to the supermarket and bought some. It was still on the roof of my car.
That's a special for you. Yeah. That's a great that.
Standing on the top of my old Jaguar and dropping mackerel onto a tarmac road, it totally damages them. But when you see the film of these things that have fallen from the sky, they're not damaged.
No, exactly. Yeah, it is a mystery. You really do not know. They like to pass this thing off as that they're all accountable through unusual, rare weather phenomena. But at the end of the day, a lot of things just don't add up. I mean, I've looked into falls. I didn't get into fish falls and things. I know of them, but I did get into the falling of possible biological panspermia. I've got into that, and that is like things that might have come from the fall from meteorites and strange globulous jelly, which might be containing some form of biological life in it, or some form of even DNA in some cases. You know, these are lots of strange things. Red rain or blood rain that falls from the sky, and you know, there's a lot of strange anomalies that do fall to planet Earth. But you know what I mean? I still believe that, you know, space is just a soup of bacterial life, and anything passing through that and drops to planet Earth, maybe. I mean, you know, we have spacecraft, when we do have a lot of spacecraft finally leaving orbiting of Earth, getting out of the electromagnetic fields of Earth and coming back, we might find that some of those rockets have got biological life on them in particle form.
Well, it also doesn't help that we as a society, and the Western society, are so divorced from the reality of the natural world that things which previous generations would have recognized as being perfectly natural, think.
Yeah,
I mean, I had a lady in the village, she's dead now, come banging on my door and being totally outraged. Said, one of your animals has got out, it's on my lawn. And she showed me a photograph. She said, you've got a snake it's out on my lawn. I said, madam, I don't have any snakes. It was an elephant horn caterpillar, which was about 4.5, 5 inches long. And because she had lived all her life in the city and then retired to this little idyllic country village, decided to blame the weird hippie at the bottom of because he's the only one who introduces strange animals to the village. People don't know what things are. It's like we had a local farmer contact us because of big gelatinous masses in his field.
Yes.
They're slime molds.
Yeah, some are.
Slime molds are fantastic, really peculiar creatures, and most people wouldn't recognize them if they. Archie, sit down, stop it.
Yeah, they don't know you're right, Jonathan. There's a lot of those things do happen and are hard to identify, but there has been some vigorous research on some of these things, which have been identified and analysed by some laboratories around the world, some of the best ones, and they have found in them unique things that they can't identify. So maybe sometimes, especially when there's been meteoric falls, some of those things seem to impact and leave or they're carrying some type of, biological material on something like that. Laboratories do believe that, some of these things do fall. There are obviously other things which get misidentified. Of course, I've been involved in one of them. There was a TV show called Wild X-Files on the National Geographic I was involved in. And the episode was Bird Apocalypse and Blood Rain. And it talked about the research that was carried out on falls. And I was actually involved in investigation, finding some of this stuff. And a lot of the things it talks about what happens around the world, and they're analysing, and they did on some of them. They really did find some very unusual things, as if like it was picked up some type of biological or DNA and something in it that they couldn't identify. So we have to say, well, where's that come from? So it's maybe it's something from space. We don't know, because we have to say, spores of life. How does life get here? That sort of thing.
I think it'd be very surprising if life didn't fall here from space.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The idea that the idea that there are many people who think it's impossible. Well, I think it's not just possible, but probable. It's something very strange if it did.
Guys, listen, we got 2 minutes left, but before we end the show,
you're kidding. How did that happen?
We've been on an hour and a half. We've gone over half an hour.
Happens every time.
Anyway, listen. Bloody hell!
I want to direct people to Steve Meara's Facebook, because there are some great things happening with the YouTube channel. Steve Meara posts a lot on YouTube.
Yeah, I put as much as I can. I'm Steve Meara Official on YouTube. I'm always trying to get there. There's a new series starting soon, which is a new one about advanced studies in UAP. And I mean, I totally talk about advanced studies. I'm talking about psionic studies. You might have been hearing about things like that, about how consciousness connects with UFOs and experiments and things like that. So there's some new stuff going on there. But yeah, Steve Meara Official is my YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook, and you'll find me on most platforms, I think.
And the Phenomena magazine, please give that a look if you haven't done so already. It is free. You don't have to pay for it, and it is amazing. I'm not just saying it. I read it myself.
Awakening Events Limited, or awakeningevents.com. .co.uk, awakeningevents.co.uk. You go on there, because it's all under one banner, because we had all these different websites. And it was just like, oh, this is getting confusing. So you bring a master website together, for the events that we have, Awakening Event, and under there you'll find Phenomena Magazine, the courses, a UFOing course that we do, UITC course, and other things. We're actually working on the paranormal, the PITC course now, which is an advanced paranormal course. Because people kept asking for it all the time. So yes, we're doing it, we're getting there. So we're just, we're trying to, the whole point is just trying to push forward new ideas, new experiments. Can we learn, or are we going to always be in the same spot, just wondering, because the Victorians have been at it for years, and psychic and spiritual stuff, and we can't be static anymore. We've got to move forward. So
head there, have a look. You will be pleasantly surprised, and I'm sure if you have any questions, if you put them to Steve, if you want to put them directly to him, there'll be some contact details on there where you can reach out to him. But Steve, I've got to say thank you so much for coming on.
No problem.
Will you come on after your Awakening event and talk to us again?
Absolutely, sure will. Of course will, yes.
Just let me know. Another hour and a half of because we haven't even touched the surface.
Well, no, we didn't. I mean, it's just, but you know what? We go off at a tangent because there's the world of all these strange anomalies are so strange, aren't they? And you end up getting dragged into sort of areas. You find it really fascinating, And it's been a great opportunity to talk with Jonathan. It's been some time, so so it's and hearing about some of his experiences and people he knows and what they've had experience. So yeah, it's been good. I've enjoyed it. It's been good fun.
Well, Steve, we are getting you back on. And before I go, I've got to say thank you, Steve, for your research, your input, and what you bring to us, because we do Well, I listen sometimes, but it gives us a different angle to look at things and the way to investigate and to research ourselves. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
I enjoy doing it. Thanks.
I'm going to leave the last words with Jonathan because he's a man with words of wisdom sometimes.
Me? What you imply? I just want to say thanks, Steve. I've really enjoyed this last hour and a half.
No, I've enjoyed it myself, Jonathan. It was good to catch up.
Great fun. So come back and do the show again. Let's make sure that Dan's ill again. And I'll
Okay.
come
We'll just get rid of Dan and have you anyway.
Well, I'll just come be your assistant again because I want to talk more about Singing Stones because I'm damn certain.
Well, I can certainly, next time along, and if you're on, Jonathan, I can certainly talk about more the geological things and anomalies that we've come across over the years.
I was brought up in Hong Kong 60 years ago, and I remember being told stories by the Chinese people in my parents' household. I remember being told stories about Singing Stones then, and I'm going to go through my Chinese folklore books and see if I can find any Singing Stones off, because this is just going to run and run. You've totally intrigued me.
Singing Stones. I will find out. I'll dig out some more information from the ones in Ireland for you as well.
To be continued, guys. We're going to say good night. Thank you for joining us, everybody in the chat. And we will be back next week at the same time, the same place. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.